With our reference in tow and inserted into our scene, we can start using those reference images to allow us to block out some primary forms. I've brought with me the final finished sculpture of my little hammerhead shark, and I wanted to show you the purpose of all of this blockout stage. There's a tremendous amount of sculptural detail that I've gone in, but this isn't where I began. This is where I ended up. It's very difficult to explore and discover all of these shapes and forms quickly in a way that's iterative and kind of makes sense from a sculptural perspective. Starting with a high resolution mesh like this is going to yield more challenges in the initial sculpting phase than it was if we were just to start with a whole series of simple shapes. Our goal in this is to make something that looks like this. Let me just zip over to this object real fast. There we go. This is our goal. This is the exact same mesh where I began sculpting our little hammerhead shark. Here we can see that I've distilled all of those complex forms down into a whole series of cubes and cylinders. From here, we can paint with a broad brushstroke. We can sculpt in primary forms easily without having to worry about all the technical challenges that come with working with a lot of high detailed polygonal meshes. From here, it really is just a whole simple series of simple shapes. Okay, there's a cube. Here's another one, the cube. I mean, if you look carefully here, there's even some big-time technical problems with the mesh. Here, all the normals are flipped and facing the exact opposite direction on that part of the mesh. I don't care, because what I'm ultimately trying to craft and create here is a blockout, a quick representation of what the final hammerhead shark is going to look like, so that I can kind of set the foundation quickly before having to deal with a lot of polygons. If we keep it in this early blockout phase, I can really focus on being creative and painting with a broad brushstroke and establishing the correct proportions and the correct volume and mass of all of these critical shapes without having to deal with a zillion polygons. So let's go ahead and get started and start working and fleshing out this entire thing. I want to begin, much like we did last time. Pardon the dust for a moment. I'm going to look at my scene from the left, from the side, just by hitting the number 3 key on my keyboard. And in object mode, let's just add in that background image one more time, because in this particular project file, I didn't have it. Let's go ahead and load it in here real quick. And once again, we'll change the viewport properties at the object level to be in front. And then if we look at the texture details, we can, of course, change the opacity down to something quite low. Let's do like 0.2. Think of it like 20% transparent. Now from here, we can start blocking out the overall mass. If you're following along with me and building a hammerhead shark, I've provided you this image inside of all of our learning resources, and I really super encourage you to use it. It's going to help quickly block out some shapes. Now, one of the things I've done in this reference image is start to color code and kind of understand, if you will, the function and the purpose of these basic simple shapes. The yellow, of course, is the head. The green is going to be the body, and the blue are going to be all the tail elements. For the most part, these are going to be cylinders and squares. So let's go ahead and start blocking out these simple cylinders and squares. I try to do this as fast as I can so I can start to explore quickly. We want to iterate fast and make some really good informed decisions from the reference images that are in here. Let's go ahead and add in a simple cylinder. There we go. That looks pretty good. I'll hit the tab key to go into edit mode. And of course, I'm going to start to scale all this down. I'm going to do all of this work with just a series of very simple cylinders. I'm not worrying about the technical details of all of this. What I'm really most concerned with is making sure that I'm establishing the mass. So I'm going to scale this down. I'm not trying to make a good model here. I'm trying to explore the three-dimensionalities of the shape that it is that I'm trying to create. Let's go into my perspective view. And I'm going to grab that backmost polygon. You're free and encouraged to do whatever you'd like, whatever modeling tools are at your disposal. I'm going to do just some very simple box modeling. I'm trying to keep this as simple as I can. Like I said, I'm not trying to make a good model here. I'm trying to set the foundation. This tracing guide is a big time helpful. Now for this one, I'm going to extrude it forward towards the head by hitting the E key and just bring it forward back into the side view. And then just using the grab tool, I'm going to scale it down. Now one of the things that I like to do when I'm blocking out these simple shapes is making sure that I've set my, I've set my my transform pivot points to active element or median point. When it's at median point, it's going to take the selected polygon and it's going to put your cursor or your tool handles right in the center of that. Active element is also pretty good. It's going to make sure that the tool handles go to whatever's currently selected or with the active element inside of the scene. If you have multiple verts selected like this, notice that I'm going to turn the reference off just to make it easier. See how they're all kind of orange? Well, if I deselect one, like that one right there, and then put it back, see how it's white? Whatever is the white component, the vert, edge, or polygon, that's the active element. And if our transform pivot point is set to active element, the tool handles are going to go to whatever is active. So keep that in mind. There's two alternatives to working quickly and blocking out all these shapes. If you're working in face mode, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about it because whatever face is selected is going to be the active. When you're working with verts and edges, then a little bit different. Yeah, it's pretty good. So there's just the body. And so now I need to start making some decisions here. I got to start figuring out how big my head's going to be. This side image does a really great job of giving us the proportions of the side profile of my shape, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't tell me how big along, in this case, the x-axis, how long the head's going to be going this way. So your reference is only going to get you so far, and that's okay, because we are artists, by the way. It's our job to kind of fill in the blanks here a little bit and get this working the way I want it to work. I'm just using the move and the scale tools here to very quickly block out these overall shapes. Yeah, something kind of like that. Grab the bottom one real fast. You can start to see how quick it goes in the production of this. There we go. Well, it looks like I've missed it all, and that's fine. If you remember from our previous conversations about modeling in Blender, if I wanted to select this entire cube, of course, the easiest way to do it, jump over into face mode, hit the number 3 key in the top row of your keyboard, and then hit the L key, L as in Lima or lemon. And what that's going to do is select all of the connected polygons that are associated with that shape. Basically, whatever's underneath your cursor, that's already your mouse cursor, that's already selected, is going to be grabbed. There we go. I'm going to scale this along the z-axis just a little bit. Yeah, that's good enough for me. There we go. Now, from the side view, I very quickly established how long it's going to be along the y-axis, but now I need to do it along the x-axis. How long is it going to be? And this is where working in 3D really starts to pay off a little bit. I'm going to change my transform pivot point back to median, which is always going to kind of find the center point of whatever's selected and put it automatically there. Our reference image is only going to get us so far, so let's scale this along the x and start to experiment and explore with the overall mass. We've got to start making some decisions here. Working in 3D allows us to make some informed decisions pretty fast. Yeah, these simple shapes, I'm only working with a 6-sided cube, so if I want to make any changes, I can do that. We also want to look at the totality of all of the model pieces and make proportional changes based off of the information that we can see. I've set a good foundation, a good starting point for the head, but once I get all the fins in there, I may want to go back in and change this. Let's do that real fast. Let's zip on our reference one more time. I'm going to grab all of the parts and pieces for the head just by putting my cursor over, hitting the L key. I got the move tool turned on, so I'm just going to duplicate this. To duplicate a polygonal piece, it's just Shift D. I'm going to left click and drag where I want that piece to go. Now this is going to be that big fin on the back. Let's start moving and rotating this into position here. Of course, we're probably going to want to make it a little bit smaller. How thick, how wide along the x-axis is that fin? I don't know. That's what we're trying to find out right now. We're trying to figure out how all this is going to work together. Now here's another great trick. We were talking about working with our transform pivot points earlier, but we also have the transform orientation. That's going to determine the orientation of the tool handles on whatever is selected or active inside of our scene. Right now it's set to global, so the orientation of our move tools is always going to match the orientation of the global understanding of the X, Y, and Z axis. Well, I want to start moving some faces down. Check this one out. See, I want to move that face right down there to locally to its normal, to its direction. So I'm going to change my transform orientation to normal, and look how my tool handles change now. Just allows me to work a little bit faster. I could have gotten there by moving and rotating, and that's cool too. Here's another great keyboard shortcut. If you hit the comma key on your keyboard, you also get this cool little pie menu that allows you to change this pretty quickly as well. Two good keyboard shortcuts. Comma is transform orientation, and if I just do normal, and then the period key is going to be the transform. Is going to be the transform. This one right here, the transform pivot point. Excuse me. So orientation, kind of rotation of the tool handles, and then location of the tool handles with the period key. Let's go back to median point, and I want to put it to global now. So I'm going to do that. Let's rotate this thing a little bit. Yeah, we're getting close. The idea here is just to work fast, and of course you can do this in any component mode. If you want to work in verts, that's cool too. I'm going to turn on my X-ray mode. There's two ways you can turn on X-ray mode. This button in the upper right-hand corner. Also, Option Z or Alt Z if you're on a PC is going to allow you to select through and grab some verts. Sometimes it's just faster to do this, just to block out these ideas. Okay, let's turn off our reference for a moment and see how this is starting to take shape. Now, what I'm looking at here is the thickness of that fin. Does it work? Is it kind of establishing the overall proportion that I'm after? And I think, yeah, generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's turn the reference image back on, and I'll do one more. I'm gonna go back into my edge or my face selection mode, hit the L key, fire off, oops, excuse me, didn't do it. Right click to deselect, Shift D, there we go, forgot to hit Shift D. And let's just do the big fin over here in the back. And we can reuse and recycle these pieces as much as you can. I'm gonna go into my vertex selection mode, make sure that my X-ray mode is on so I can drag out a box and move these verts down. The idea is just to move fast. We don't want to spend a lot of time on this. We want to be able to get to a point where the mesh is kind of working, generally working, so we can make the changes. I want to be able to make changes in an environment like this, where I'm only dealing with basic cubes and cylinders, and then not have to worry about all that complex stuff, right? I'm a simple guy. I want to be able to move and work quickly here. Scaling these things down and just moving them into position is going to allow me to block out these overall shapes at a much faster level. Remember, this is just the foundation. We're not trying to do final finished work now. Good sculpture is one that's completed in many passes. Embrace that. I think you're going to find that your work and the quality of your work is going to go up pretty significantly once you do that. Now, I've been very mindful as I've been working and fleshing out these basic pieces to keep them all inside of the, or in line with the global y-axis. Here we go. So they're all kind of running down the middle of the y-axis, which is intentional. Because now I can start to see how my fish, my hammerhead shark, is starting to literally take shape in front of us. And now I begin to ask some important questions. Proportionally, does the size of the head here kind of match what I have for the rest of the body? Does it need to be bigger? Does it need to be smaller? If I want to make a change, making those changes now is super easy. Maybe it needs to be a little wider. Maybe it needs to be a little smaller going that way. This is the chance to make that change. We want to look at proportion and start analyzing the size, scale, and rotation of all of these parts to each other. The reference is only step one, and now I got to start using the thing between our ears, our brain, and our eyes, and most importantly, our own local creativity in blocking out and flushing out all of these little shapes. I'm going to continue this process a little bit, refining these shapes, and start creating the block out of my hammerhead shark with the idea that we can sculpt on it in the next module of this course.